What's going on, guys? Sly here, and I am in complete sensory freaking overload. New videos up from Mass Effect with another combat series video, which by the way you can see playing in the background, an interview with Dr. Lexi's voice actor, who we now know is Natalie Dormer from the Game of Thrones, and also about 20 other outlets of videos and articles going over their experiences from the 3 to 5 hours of hands-on game time that they were allowed to play. So much to read and tons of stuff to take in. But, believe it or not, there weren't that many spoilers present. Apparently, BioWare encouraged them not to talk about any narrative options, and more so than that, they were only allowed to see the first few opening minutes, and then were skipped ahead a few hours so that they could use abilities and different weapons. So that cuts a lot of the opening sequence and story out of any spoiler possibilities. That is an awesome thing to hear. I was literally like scrolling line by line, hiding the rest of the paragraph down below the monitor so I wouldn't read and, stumble into some kind of super spoiler. But like I said, there weren't any, and I am totally okay with that. So let's move on to what you should be taking away from this infosplosion of news and reviews. Now, I'm only going to talk about the things we are just now finding out about. All the old news and speculation are in my other videos if you wish to catch up. But this video is mainly here to shrink down all of these different articles and reviews and point out all the new facts, so you don't have to go and try to find them yourself. Now there's a lot here, so let's get to it. First and foremost, I have yet to read a single damning accusation by any of the reviewers. A few of them did say that there were quite a few bugs, glitches, frame rate drops, and other pre-release bugs, but as you can see here, the build they played was not the final build, and many of the concerns they showed are already addressed in a day one patch. So first of all, that does confirm that there is a day one patch and it will be needed in order to play the game. But like I said, every single reviewer seemed to love it, and they all walked away wanting to keep playing. The characters, the galaxy map, the new ships, the banter, hubs, cities, planets, all of that was said to be stunning. And while it does feel completely new, they said that it feels like a Mass Effect game at the core. IGN said that every area felt fresh and new, like they took the time to completely recreate every area. Whereas most large open world games simply use the same features over and over again, everything from the menus to the nomad, the skills, all was said to be fresh, exciting, and fun. And even though it's new in its own way, it still feels like a Mass Effect game. Now, the only slightly negative comment I heard the entire time was about gunplay. They said at times it does feel a little lacking, but the smoothness and agility of the jetpack mixed with the great graphics of the powers and skills make you totally forget about that problem very, very quickly. Now that was one thing I was actually worried about. While I wanted a new Mass Effect game, I was worried that it would be, too new. And it's kind of hard to explain, but when a game just isn't right. It just doesn't have that certain something to it, and I was worried that this would happen to Andromeda, but it turns out I was wrong, and I am completely okay with that. Also, for the music fans out there, the score used in Andromeda has been said to be the best of any Mass Effect game. That is a bold statement, man, and I am excited to hear it myself. Everything from the weapons, to the ships passing overhead, to the background music, galaxy map, tense situations, it all feels like Mass Effect and has been created perfectly. So, that is definitely another thing to look forward to. Alright, enough about the feels, let's get into some of this new information, and we'll start at the beginning. So once you start a new game, you'll actually be asked if your previous Mass Effect playthroughs had a male or female Shepard in them. So this pretty much confirms that we will definitely hear something about Shepard in the new game, perhaps even a picture. Now it could just be that they use the correct pronoun when talking in a conversation, but maybe it will have a bigger impact than we think. I don't know, but that is pretty sweet. Also at start, once you choose your writer, you have to select his training, similar to what he did in the original trilogy, but of course without the limitations. Now there are 6 options you get to choose from: security, biotic, technician, leader, scrapper, or operative. No word on which does what or which one is the better option, but I'm assuming you start off with a small bonus depending on which one you choose. Also, depending on if you choose Scott or Sarah, you will be treated differently and will have completely different personalities. And as such, squad mates will talk and respond to you with different lines, which is another thing everyone mentioned, how in-depth the dialogue really is. Now upon the Tempest, crewmates walk around freely, and they are way more dynamic than just in a stationary spot like back on the Normandy. They sometimes group up and talk to each other. IGN talked about how she ran into two of her teammates talking about religion, completely on their own. And while we're talking about dialogue, everyone seemed impressed with the new system. Since Renegade and Paragon are no longer represented in this new system, it is said to be a great replacement, even better than the original trilogy. There are more shades of gray, and you feel that the conversations you have could be something that you would actually say yourself. It's not so plain as you're always a huge dick to someone or a sappy do-gooder. There are more realistic ways to answer questions, and everyone seems to agree that the system is pretty amazing. Also, with the removal of Paragon and Renegade actions within mid-conversations, we now have a name for their replacement. They are called impulse actions. Something else we didn't know about. Next, let's hit on some of the crew. Now, we know the names of our 6 teammates and 2 crew members, but now we know them all. Now, there are 10 people on board the Tempest. The 6 you already know about, and 4 crew members. Calo Jath, the Solarian pilot, Dr. Lexi Tapero, the ship's doctor and psychologist, and then there's the Scottish science officer Suvi, and Chief Engineer Gil Brody. Oh, and of course Sam is there as well. So it's nice to finally know all of the main characters we get to interact with. I'm sure there'll be more out on the Nexus and other hubs, but shipmates are usually the special ones. And speaking of Sam, short for Simulated Adaptive Matrix, Sam was created by Ryder's parents, Alec and Ellen Ryder. Now apparently you can ask Sam to tell you jokes, and like other AIs, he's not very good at it. But you do need to stay on Sam's good side, because it's hinted at that Sam is the key to finding out your parents' history as well as your own. The family secrets are tied up with Sam, and the more you talk and the more he likes you, the more you'll find out. And next up, this is something I noticed on one review but none of the others. We now know the names of the 3 remaining arcs. The human arc is of course named Hyperion, the Stellarian's arc is named the Parchero, the Asari arc is called Lunesia, and the Turian arc is the Natanis. The other arcs are missing, and it's still up in the air on whether or not we find them, or if they make a presence later on in the game. And moving along here, we now have a clearer picture about crafting. Weapon crafting is a huge part of Andromeda, and blueprints can be created by a sort of material called R&D. It stands for research data, and it can be found by scanning environments and creatures all over the different planets. Also, blueprints are coded into rarity. Bronze is common, silver is uncommon, and gold is rare. And even though no one stated this in any of the reviews this morning, we do know that red is ultra rare, as you can see here from the previous gameplay trailer. The rarer the weapon, the more R&D it costs. All crafted items can be named, and within these crafted items are things called augmentations. They allow you to meld special stats or unique properties. For instance, you can add armor augments that allow you to hover longer, or you can add augments to weapons that allow more damage while you are held in place with your jetpack. These augments also allow you to meld weapons together. For instance, in this tweet by Ian Fraser, you see that we have a Revenant that uses the overheat mechanism. And I read somewhere else that someone made a beam-based Black Widow. Everyone was talking about the plethora of options in crafting and how many different combinations were possible. So that is something I really cannot wait to sink my teeth into. Okay, and moving on to the last few notable things. First is that the Tempest has a messaging board where crew members can write messages for each other, or to put forward any ideas. Some people have speculated that side missions will pop up via these messages, but mostly they just talked about how crew members wrote about how they disliked other crew members. Nonetheless, it's something different and interesting. Also, if you like your model ship collection in the previous games, it's been confirmed that model ships are returning, so you can indeed deck out your cabin with all the callouts from past and present ships. And finally, the most intriguing part that I caught, and also something that no one else really mentioned except for one article that I read, and that has to deal with Quarians. Eurogamer had a chance to ask the producer of Mass Effect Andromeda, Fabrice Condominas, if Quarians will be making an appearance in-game. Condominas said, quote, "You should look for them, but I can't answer that. If you're really interested to know what happened to the Quarians and where they are, be careful of the choices you make and pay attention." That to me, guys, is a pretty bold statement. When a dev says look for them and be careful to make the right decision, odds are that they are indeed somewhere in the game, hidden along, somewhere deep. So that was something I thought that was pretty exciting. Everyone's been asking about Quarians lately. but this is the best answer we've had so far. Now, of course, a lot more was said and talked about, but most of it we already knew from previous videos or had deduced from still images or video breakdowns. Again, this wasn't everything that was said, but this is all of the new information I was able to find. Now, the only things I haven't said yet are a few semi-spoilers that aren't really relevant, just a nice thing to find and see on your own. But that about wraps it up, ladies and gents. This is the kind of news we've been waiting to hear, and I'm sure more will be leaked or uncovered in the coming days. And as always, if it's worth mentioning, I'll be breaking it down here on my channel. The official Mass Effect website launched its second video of its combat gameplay series, and I'll have the full breakdown of that video Friday morning, which is the 24th. If you're watching this when I post this video, that's tomorrow, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I also just released my latest news video, which goes over all the little tidbits of news that happened over the past week, and you can find that in the description box below as well, or you can click it at the end of this video. Always a pleasure, guys. Thank you all so much for not only watching, but for your support of my channel. Mass Effect is by far my favorite game series, and the reason I started gaming in the first place. So to be able to cover this is amazing, and I look forward to talking and playing with fans just as passionate about it as I am when Mass Effect Andromeda finally drops. As always, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at SlyNation or on my Facebook page at SlyNation Gaming. It's the best place to stay up to date on everything Mass Effect, as well as recent uploads from my YouTube channel. Couldn't do this without you all, so keep an eye out for more videos coming out of SlyNation here very soon. But until then, this is your boy Sly, and I will catch you all next time.